Okay, awesome. So we have two panelists this evening. We have Pat Frost and of the Weaverville Rotary Club, and we have Tom March from CalTrans. So we're going to start with Pat. So just a quick bio on him. He is the current president of the Weaverville Rotary Club. He has been a member of the club since 2001. One of the skills he brings to the club is extensive experience writing grants, which he developed during the 12 years he was the manager of the Trinity County Resource Conservation District. He and his wife, Carol, have lived in Trinity County since 1999. This evening, Pat is going to address some bike racks and some new trash and recycling receptacles that Rotary is partnering with to place in District 2. So Pat, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so me key up my little slideshow. So anyway, I wanted to thank Jill for giving me the opportunity to talk at her town hall meeting. So the Rotary Club of Weaverville, like all the Rotary clubs around the world, are able to apply for grant programs through Rotary International and through larger Rotary regional programs. And this past year, I mean, just finishing up right now in our kind of our 2020, 2021 year, we were able to get a grant from our Rotary, what's called district or kind of Northern California area, to assist the Trinity Trail Alliance with building a shade structure at the Loudon Park Bike Park. And that project is finished. Our club contributed $3,000 of grant money towards a roughly $8,000 project. What we're looking at as our next project, so for us, our fiscal year, interestingly, the Rotary fiscal year is the same as the state and the county, so it begins on July 1st. So what we're looking at is, as a next project, a bike racks for Main Street project. This project, and I know we have at least Jill Richards from the Arts Council, and maybe Judy also. So this was a project that was started maybe a year, 18 months ago. It involved the Trinity River Players, our partners, which is the nonprofit that owns and operates the movie theater, among other things, the Trinity Arts Council and Trinity High School, to develop a template or a prototype for bicycle racks downtown, recognizing that in downtown Weaverville, you need to meet the standards of the Architectural Review Committee for downtown Weaverville. So the Arts Council worked with the arts teachers and students to develop designs. A design was chosen. The high school vocational education program kind of built these templates, and the Trinity River Players helped fund the first pair of bicycle racks. This is what the one of the prototypes looks like. There's another one that's just off the screen that says Weaverville and has similar kind of art graphics in it. They were approved by the Architectural Review Committee, and with the requirement that they be either painted black or gray, and these are obviously black. And the idea is to place them in strategic areas downtown to give people secure places to park and lock their bicycles. And originally the idea was to place them on the sidewalk, but with all deference to our CalTrans representative tonight, it's a little more complicated to get permits to put them on the sidewalk because that's CalTrans right away. So instead, what we're looking at is locations just outside of the right of way, like this one, which is on Bud Clark, the former Trinity County Realtor's property next to the theater. Possibly one near the bandstand or gazebo. One next to Angela's Beads, just outside of the right of way on the Morris property. And possibly one down towards 5 Cent Gulch and the Highland Art Center and the Jake Jackson Museum. So these are just places that we're contemplating. Got to make sure that they're outside of the CalTrans right of way and that we have the permission of the landowners. So the other thing that I would wanted to get from all of you tonight or in the future would be just suggestions of other locations. Where else might these bike racks go? Our timing is a little bit tight. We have to apply to the Rotary grant program during the month of May. We'll work with local metal workers to come up with some costs for each rack, and we'll kind of scale ourselves based on probably 4 to 5 locations for the racks for this first phase. Some kind of basics about the grants. You can apply for 1 grant per year. So we're actually contemplating this year doing the bike racks with a partnership on the receptacles, and I'll talk about those, the trash receptacles, in a minute. The year begins in July 1st. They usually award the grants in August. They want the projects done by May of the next year, and we especially want to be done by May of 2022 because we fully intend to apply for another grant. The maximum you can ask for is 10,000. One of the things I've learned is it's really nice to let other bigger clubs or organizations apply for the big dollar amounts and instead look for ways to sweep up the budget dust at the end of the day. Apply for things that are small enough that nobody else can really make a project, but our community can. They require a match of 50 cents on the dollar for every grant, and that's usually met by our partners. And they like to see that that the match is greater than that 50 cents on the dollar, because that means more leverage for their money. They want projects that could be implemented in 1 year or less, which is the kind of thing that we focus on. Then the phase 2, and I'm calling it phase 2 2022, which is replace the trash barrels. Everybody is familiar with the wine barrel trash receptacles that have been on Main Street for 20 plus years. Darryl probably could tell us exactly how long they've been on there. But the Rotary Club put those up 20 to 30 years ago, modifying wine barrels, and frankly, they've gotten beat. I mean, we had roughly 20 of them at one time. We're down to about 10 of them. They're leaning, they're skewed, they don't have good lids, and it's time to replace them. It was kind of fortuitous that we had the COVID pandemic come along, because the county came and picked them all up and took them over to solid waste department to keep them in safekeeping, because they didn't want trash barrels with trash accumulating during the pandemic. So my goal is to have them out there for the minimum amount of time in the future and do something that may be a little more permanent. The picture on the slide is just an example of the kind of trash barrel that we think would meet the Architectural Review Commission's requirements. The need is really high. I mean, I think that we absolutely have to have trash receptacles on Main Street. My goal would be to have not only trash receptacles, but also recycling receptacles, because that has been missing for all these years. Some of the issues or challenges that we need to meet. One is approval of the Weaverville Architectural Review Committee. We've already reached out to them to begin to get their feedback. And because the trash barrels will need to be on the sidewalks, we need to figure out what, if any, requirements there are in the CalTrans right-of-way. CalTrans never required anything for the previous trash barrels, so we're hoping that they'll be lenient and not be real aggressive in trying to require permits, but we'll go through what we need to go through. So this is just another example of a trash barrel commercially made. These are whiskey barrels instead of wine barrels, but I think they would certainly be appropriate considering that we used wine barrels before. So what I don't have on here is a slide that shows that we've actually already applied for a grant. So we have a partnership right now for the trash receptacles with the Trinity County Resource Conservation District. They applied actually today for a grant for $8,000 to fund 10 to 12 trash barrels. We'll find out in June if we get the grant. It's a old farts only kind of grant program. It's through AARP. The other piece of the grant, just for those of you who are interested, and I can go back. So a few years ago, there was a Preserve America grant that UC Cooperative Extension got that included this kiosk for directional maps, informational maps in downtown, and this is near the Highland Arts Center. Those maps are getting kind of faded and worn, so the grant the RCD applied for, because they did the original mapping, is to replace the maps also. And that's pretty much what I have. So people have other ideas, places to put bike racks, places to put wine barrels, or questions about or thoughts on other projects, because the Rotary Club is dedicated to trying to have a grant funded project every year for Weaverville. And our focus is the town of Weaverville. It's not, the greater county of Trinity, but really focuses on the Weaverville area. So that's what I've got. Jill, thanks.
Okay, excellent. So a couple of questions. Anna, I think there's one in the chat if you want to start with that.
Sure. Pat, would you mind?
Let me
Oh,
find.
thank you.
Should I stop the share?
Yes, please.
Okay, so
Thank you
chat.
so much. So I was asking about bike racks at the post office, and if perhaps if there are bike racks at the post office, and if not, that might be a suitable location for some of your bike rack proposals. So if that's off of Main Street, would that still be within your purview?
Sure, it's Weaverville, so hadn't thought about the post office. That's a great place to put one, and it's well outside of the CalTrans right away. So that's a good one to add. I'll get a photo.
Okay,
the other question,
And I think that that's privately owned, right? I think that actually Tom Walls might own that.
It is privately owned, so
Yeah.
post office is the post office has got a contract though, so it depends on, you may still have to deal with them a little bit. But
Right.
there's plenty of room down there. There's plenty of room down there beyond just the post office building itself, so.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, and then the other question I have for you, Pat, we saw two different pictures. So are they going to look like kind of the wine barrel design again, or more like the black kind of more kind of square looking structure?
Undecided. So that, part of that is we've posed some options to the chairman of the Architectural Review Committee. So we want something that they will easily approve. Interestingly, either one costs about the same.
Okay.
And just to let you know, a commercially produced trash receptacle, other than kind of your, the kind that are in the post office, for example, these outdoor worthy ones run between $450 and $600 each.
Wow. Good to know.
there was also a question, Pat, for you about possibly looking at farther, I guess, to the east of town. So somewhere like the water bar or that end of town, maybe a bike rack there.
Yeah, no, I think, we do need to figure out what the locations. I think I was involved for a little bit with the Trinity River Park when they were first hatching this idea. And they certainly even included down at the Holiday Mart and CVS. They could be, and the idea is to have the same design bike rack repeated everywhere from a branding point of view, get people thinking about it the same way. So yeah, we could definitely expand it in this grant application or in a phase 2.
Okay. I guess I would throw in there, just wondering if a bike rack would also be appropriate over near the market somewhere, CVS or Tops for people who are shopping.
Yeah, that's what I was just describing when you were frozen.
Oh, I didn't know I froze up. Okay, thank you.
But yeah, so down near CVS, Holiday Mart, across the way, at some of the restaurants on the other side of the street, certainly would be appropriate places for those.
Pat, maybe CVS or Holiday might be willing to be help us with the cost sharing.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
So,
I mean, and that's certainly, I know generally businesses are struggling, right? I mean, we know that the pandemic has been a struggle for everybody. At this point, the goal was not to try to hit up members of the Weaverville Chamber or anything to contribute, but as we expand this throughout the entire length of Main Street, that's a possibility to get some help also.
Okay, Anna, any more questions in the chat?
Hey, Pat, as a suggestion, when you're applying on your encroachment permit for the trash receptacles,
Yeah.
replace in kind. That goes a long way.
Okay, that's good suggestion. Thank you, Tom.
And that, they've been there. You have your historical district. Obviously, traveling public, safety of the traveling public is primary one. And we want to ensure that, but if there's a good spot that works, this historic district is new to me. I'm learning about it and what can and cannot be done. But I'll talk around and see about that as well as my venture in this area.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom.
Sure. And then the bike racks, I was focused on something else. Are you purchasing the bike racks or are you fabricating them?
We're fabricating them. We're having them fabricated.
Okay. The tree cages that are there on Main Street, those were fabricated by CAL FIRE over in the Intermountain camp out of Beaver, out past MacArthur. I don't know which other camps might do that also, but just a thought, it's always good to have resources.
Thank you, Tom. There was one other question in the chat. Did anyone else here in the audience have a question for Pat before we go to the last question for him in the chat? I think in general, Pat, the question is asking, it sounds like you're applying for grants through Rotary. How do general members of the public come to Rotary and request or solicit proposals that could be included in a grant proposal? Oh, did we lose Pat? I see that he may have gotten kicked off. His internet is a little dodgy up there. So
this is Darryl. I can probably respond to that. Basically, find a Rotarian and bring your program or request to the club, and we'll be happy. I mean, they come to us not all the time, but we certainly see several of them a year, and obviously encourage people to come and give us their ideas and things they want to do. That's really what happened with the cover at the bike path. That was brought to us by the Trail Alliance folks. So that's what you find a Rotarian. If it's hard to find one, Jill Cox is one of our newest members. Pat Frost, myself, there's a lot of us around. So
thank you.
Okay, Hey, excellent. Well, I don't know if we'll just thank Pat later. Really appreciate that. And it's exciting to think how downtown will kind of perk up with these new additions. And I think it's really fun to think toward. Also, just every time we see one of those bike racks, we're just going to think of Trinity High kids who had a hand in that. And then going forward 20 years from now, you know, they'll still be coming back to their homecomings and looking at what they did. And I think that kind of thing is exciting and really fun. So convenient that we, Tom, that you were here to speak to some of those other concerns. That's nice, but I'm going to go ahead and formally introduce Tom March now of CalTrans. He is the CalTrans District 2 Landscape Specialist, serving as an arborist, pet control advisor, rest area coordinator, and water treatment operator. He's been doing this from 2016 to the present, excuse me. Beforehand, Tom worked at the City of Reading Parks Department as the lead arborist and gardener. That was 11 years of service there from 2005 to 16. And prior to that, he worked in Reading as a landscape construction and maintenance worker from 1999 to 2005. Tom is a graduate of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with a Bachelor's of Science in Horticulture. So Tom, thank you for joining us this evening. He's going to speak to some Weaverville street tree assessments and so forth. And Tom, we'll just let you take it from there. And you're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you for this venue to be able to speak to the community. Now, can I share my screen? Go ahead and do that.
Yes, you should be able to just freely share your screen.
Okay, so do we have a tree and then now Main Street? Are you seeing that? Okay. So the last couple of years, I've been doing quick assessment of the street trees down on Main Street. You know, trying to find the problems in them. And I was out there. Well, to start off, in January, I had mentioned in the Fire Safe Council a meeting about what it's going to take to mitigate some problem trees. And this was in January. And coincidentally, sadly, I don't know if everyone heard about the accident, the tree versus vehicle on 199, and that's perked up a lot of people's ears. So just trying to get out and do our part for public safety. So then talking to Jill, we actually met up last week and just a quick discussion about it and suggested to speak here. So what I'd like to do is try to share some information about tree risk assessment and to share what's going on in my mind when I see things. Sometimes we all see things differently. So when it comes to you know, tree risk, as a tree owner, we all have our obligations to inspect our trees for unsafe conditions, to prevent injury or damage caused by trees, and then to mitigate that for the unsafe conditions. Since all trees have some level of risk associated with them, it's important to assess and determine if the tree is structurally sound or has a potential for failure. All trees will fail at one time or another. And it could be a catastrophic fail, it could be a minor fail, but you know, eventually something's going to happen. And it's our job as tree owners to mitigate that and prevent it from happening. But so we're going to need to do some clarification on some terms. So there's what's called tree risk assessment. For a tree to be considered hazardous, it first must be defective with risk for failure in a target that is threatened. In this instance, we are discussing the 51 trees, or excuse me, the 51 liquid ambers and the one oak tree on Main Street in Weaverville. To better understand tree risk assessment concept, so there's more, then there's also the target. In this instance, we're talking about people, we're talking about public property, sidewalks, buildings, but also activities. Let's say you have your 4th of July parade, or even just keeping commerce moving. We don't want to block the road. We want to make sure that people have a safe ability to get from point A to point B, especially in emergency situations if needed to go to a hospital or evacuation. Then there's risk. Risk is considered the combination of likelihood of tree failure and the severity of the possible consequences of that event. As stated, every tree has a potential to fail and will eventually at some time fail. And we can talk about, a branch versus being struck by with a heavy loaded branch falling from 80 feet. There's a different level of risk there. Or even blocking the road, blocking commerce. To mitigate these risks, we make an effort to reduce it by pruning healthcare practices, or by deciding to move that target. Let's say if it was a picnic bench, and our extremely effort would be to actually remove the tree. Every situation is different. Then there is hazard. Hazard is a likely the likeliness source of that harm, as identified as a tree part which affects the target zone. The entire tree, the single branch can be determined as the hazard. Individual characteristics must be conducted, evaluating such defects and potential for failure. Characteristics are things such as the wounds, decay, included bark. Sometimes when you see a tree growing, we all know that trees expand out from the center core. And so when there's a branch at a short angle, that crotch, which is called the crotch, in that joint there, the bark, it binds on itself, it pushes on itself, and that's what's called included bark. And it actually pushes away from the trunk, or let's say codominant, two trunks of a tree pushing away from each other. That is leveraging the trees to split, or the branches to split. And then another characteristic to follow is the species. The known species, the known potential of a species to heal or compartmentalize to seal the wound. Sometimes it might be poor growth habits, shallow root systems, which we're seeing, trees that are water seekers, that infiltrate sewer lines, or DIs, intakes on storm drains, can cause damage. Some might also have trees have softwoods like cottonwoods, and then there's hardwoods such as oaks. Also, cottonwood would be a very poor choice for a street tree because of its softwood and likeliness to fail. Another characteristic would be canopy size and the shape distribution. Large oversized trees on any location act like a sail on old ships. They'd be 3 sheets to the wind, or they would have that potential to grab the wind, and the wind would be would push on the surface area, and actually stress the limb to cause failure, or even uproot the tree if it's poorly rooted. It has poor root structure. Then there is tree species. I think we talked about that a little bit. That some trees are prone to prone to failure or problematic structures. Like I said, cottonwoods, eucalyptus are the ones that come to mind. But then liquid ambers. Liquid ambers are known for having summer limb drop, and that's when the branches fill up with water, and during the summer months they're just pumping through the vascular system, pulling water, moisture from the ground, and through photosynthesis pulling water into these branches. And you think about one leaf is not that much, it doesn't weigh that much, but you take all the leaves of the branch and you put in seed pods and a heavy soaked branch. There's a lot of weight and density there that's sitting in a static state and ready to be released. And so that's what is summer limb drop, when it's so hot that these branches just pop out of nowhere. Some, you know, it can also be called as widowmakers. So with that said, there are some issues going on in downtown. History-wise, I don't know when these trees were planted. I'm assuming in the 70s, possibly. And then you know, maintenance has done their work on them over the years. And then in 2015, I think 14, 15, there was newly replaced concrete. That's, you know, it's only a couple of years old, and it's already showing signs of failure from the roots and uplifting the concrete, the heaving. We've had some instances of limb drop, summer limb drop, and even during winter storms. And one other issue is the high canopies. Our man lifts can't reach the heights to mitigate poor branches. They're just too high for us to reach. We rented a larger lift in 2019, and we did as much as we could, but we couldn't reach the tops. And then with the man lift, there's only certain locations we couldn't access because of the slope. The man lifts can only work on flat ground. There are some over here on 16 through 19, I think those are the ones down there by the parking lot. I'll make that a little bit bigger. No, too much. There we go. These ones here, these trees here have a lean to them, and they lean out into the roadway just a bit, so that if a car, truck comes by, or a camper, they, if they're not aware, they can clip the trunk. And then to do the labor, that is a task, and we have to allocate that time that we'd rather spend elsewhere on roadway maintenance, as well as fire safety. The broken concrete causes can create a trip and fall situation. And then there's the round seed pods that are that everyone, I'm sure, is well aware of. The numerous seed pods that are can cause a slip and fall. I do know that there's the historic district that I'm trying to learn more about, and exactly where it's located, and what can be done, and what is going to what steps need to be taken. I realize that there's a lot of cultural protection. We want to keep the integrity of the downtown feel, and keep that and not disturb that. we don't want to have any maintenance or construction to impact the business. We don't want to prevent or disturb business during tourist season. We want people to be able to stop and get out and do what they, and walk around. We don't want to discourage them by having road closure or sidewalk closure. I appreciate the aesthetic value. Obviously, there's a certain feel to it. And then there's also the public opinion of that, what kind of noticeable change would happen if we did anything different. So like I was mentioning, that I'm out for information. I'm trying to understand better what the historic district is and what the architectural committee is. I've shared with you my thoughts on what I see there, and I'm just trying to bridge this gap to remedy a problem situation. And so there are some future actions that will be happening. I am going to push maintenance to grind the high curbs, the lifted curbs of the cracks hopefully before, obviously before 4th of July and the 4th of July parade, if that's going to happen, but also before Memorial Day, if we can. And then I'll out there again to reassess the trees. Right now, they're pretty dormant and nothing looks hazardous right now. They cleaned them up the other year. So I'm looking for some input from the public. I'm looking for alternatives of what we can do, what would be acceptable for the broken concrete. How can we deal with that since we just repaired it and went through that? Can we mitigate something to prevent this from happening again? I have some thoughts, and I'm just going to throw them out there. I have one way or another. I don't want to get anybody wound up and thinking that we're going to be taking trees out, but it's thought. Alternative one would be to keep the maintenance doing what they do and grind the concrete and prune the best we can. Keep doing the same like we have. This isn't going to be sustainable. And it's not going to be a good result. The concrete is going to look and pour, and it's still going to have, we're not removing that risk of busted concrete or high risk from tree failure, from branch failure. Another proposed topic would be to replace concrete. And as we do it, we replace the tree as well. Maybe plan to phase out some of the trees so it's not noticeable, and maybe choose a different species that doesn't have as much issues and maybe can be maintained better in a medium size to maybe a smaller medium-sized tree and not these extra large 80-foot. Liquid ambers do get up to the 100-foot size. Another alternative would be too extreme, would be just to go ahead and remove the tree and replace it with concrete and be a done deal. Obviously, that would be the ultimate in removing risk, but when we're listing all alternatives, I'm trying to list them all and not leave anything out. The concrete that was, I will say that the concrete that was replaced, we try to have that as a 30-year or 50-year lifespan, I think. And we want to be good, forget the term right now off the top of my head, but we don't want to misuse public funds. And obviously we want to keep the business downtown effective and doing business. We want to make sure that people have, their ties to these trees, and that we want to keep that going. But most of all, I think what we were trying to do is, in my thoughts are, safety is number one. We want to make sure that people are walking, people are driving in a safe environment, and that we can do this effectively. So I'm very open to comments and suggestions at this point. So that's as much as I had. I can slide some pictures if you'd like, but we all know what broken concrete looks like. So I'm open to comments.
Tom, thank you so much. I think so. Just to full disclosure, I turned the chat feature into only being able to chat me directly. It seemed like the trees, quite frankly, there could be some pretty strong it's just, I think it's a trigger point for some folks, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, so thanks. So I just wanted to let everyone know that I
walk softly, and this is the situation. Help me fix it. There's many different ways we can do it, but I want to make sure it's an accepted method with all my issues that we try to juggle. So I appreciate it.
So I think the first question then, okay, so CalTrans is, so where are we right now in the process? So as far as public comment or the actions that you're seeking, can you let us know like where exactly we are right now?
Right now, this is, we're right out the gate. This is formulating a thought and how can we mitigate this? I think we can hopefully get maintenance involved and make take some bites out of it, small bites, and it would be less of an impact for the concrete replacement or tree removal and replacement. But if it goes to a project level, a construction level, then it's it's a one-time shot. If I can even get the money for it and find that. And it'd be multiple it would be just like the previous construction project in 2015. But like I said, this is the starting point. This is I've been looking at it. How big is this going to get? How much money am I going to need to find? And how can I do this? So it could be small, it could be big, and like I said, it's just I'm starting right now, so open to suggestions.
And the 51 trees that you referenced, there's a few clarifying things that are coming up that I just want to make sure that we capture here. So the 51 trees that you referenced as those are what are spotted here on your map and identified by number. These are concern or high risk trees that you have already identified. Is that correct?
These are all the trees. There's 52. 51 liquid ambers. There's one red oak out there. It's just a way for me to identify and categorize the condition. And these are all the trees. I don't know, I didn't get the roadways, but I think the local can figure it out. Yeah, these are all everything.
Thank you. Jill, how do you want to handle the questions? Do you want to see if there's someone on floor? Do you want me to ask a few questions from the chat?
Let's see if anybody present has questions first, and then we'll take actually those came from, go ahead and address the ones in the chat. Obviously, those have come up as he's been speaking, and let's just kind of move through those. And if those spark more questions, just know that we're going to, let you speak into it, or you can continue to put your questions in the chat for Anna if you would like her to ask them. And that way too, maybe you can consolidate if similar ones come in.
So I can see the chat also. Is this the same? I'm curious as the range of these age of the trees. I would imagine they're 45 years old, mid 70s, working in City Reading. We have these
in there for a second. Those trees are a little bit more older than that. We moved here in 1970, and they were all well established then. In the mid 50s, CalTrans came through and took out a whole bunch of locust trees over on Main Street. And sometime after that, they got planted, but they were clearly sometime in the mid 60s because they were here in 1970 and well-established trees then. So.
Thank you. What is the current maintenance regime? This is juggled with the whole district, as well as the region. So annually we do a annual tree inspection, and we try to find the worst ones. But as for maintaining these trees, we don't have a set regiment. I've been here since 16, and I try to locate, like I was mentioning, the high risk locations, a lot of pedestrians. We need to make sure that this is inspected more than others, but there is no documented, we're going to be here every year and do it.
I think a lot of the comments just have to do, so a few things. So there's the aesthetic value, there's the importance of shade, the element of sort of encouraging people to park and get out because it is shaded and there is sort of an ambiance. It kind of gives a corridor to Main Street. So some of the aesthetic things that you touched on. So there's just a few comments about that. I think shade, clearly cooling. We've all been to towns where there's not many trees on the concrete and we know how that feels, I think. So one of the questions is, did you identify, if you've done an annual inspection this year, did you identify any trees that are in need of immediate action now?
Well, like I said, this was a quick visual. I did not do a thorough inspection. I'm waiting for leaf material to push through, and I can identify live growth as opposed to dead branches. But there's nothing broken, hanging. There's nothing hanging that was visual. So far, they're healthy, but just because it looks healthy doesn't mean there's some underlying underbark potential there. So.
Pat, do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. I worked on the Preserve America grant that we received here in Weaverville through the Weaverville Chamber. And Roger Clem, that was our Preserve America architect person that came up and worked with us on the grant. I have several reports that I'd love to share with you, Tom. Trees on Main Street, influences on retail and shopping behavior, and trees mean business, and telling about how important trees are so that if we can either keep these or slowly replace some of them, but it makes a big difference in people wanting to stop and shop, especially as hot as it gets here in the summer.
And that's, I think would possibly be an action that we can take to, keep the aesthetic value, but most importantly, try to be good stewards of the state and create a safe environment. Those three things right there are what we're trying to accomplish, and do that juggle. And it's a tough one to keep it all happy, but maybe we can come to some agreement and find out what we can do. And so I'm open. I'd like to see those reports too. Thank you.
Sure, I'd be happy to deliver them to you. Or you can come by our office here at the visitor center, either way, whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, I can come by the visitor center next time I come out there.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
There are some questions about, do you think that these tree issues are going to make it difficult for disabled residents or access to residents currently or anytime in the future? Do you think there's an access due to the trees, the roots, anything currently or in the future?
let's see. These were quickly taken the other day. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is an ADA problem. There's a good one showing the uplift. But yeah, that's a definite truth that, you know, it is an ADA problem. Right there, that lift, getting over that curb. Right there, that this is like not so much ADA, but a curb, but a trip hazard. You know, that's 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches of movement in 5-6 years. So.
Probably have time for a few more questions. There's a few more in the chat. I'm just going to keep, I'll roll with one more from the chat and then see if someone else here. So do you have a suggestion off the top of your head if we were looking to start replacing trees with another variety? Is there a variety that you would recommend for our location and to mitigate those long-term risks so that in the next 30 or 40 years, we're not sort of in the same situation?
That's a tough one. Trees are water seekers. They're going to search out and find it. We have that meadow right there, and they're just drinking it up. Anybody who has an old sewer line, it's nothing's perfect. There is no perfect tree. We'll get that. We know some bad trees, but we try to work with what we have. We've had some Armstrong maples. Those are nice and columnar. They get up to about, I guess about 40 feet, you know, for a street tree. If it was in a natural condition, they get a lot bigger. We have a couple in town here in Reading. You know, I like the red oaks or the scarlet oaks. I think they're beautiful. The little bit wider can be a problem with traffic. I'm trying to stay away from the litter, the fruiting kind, any kind of tree that have fruits. But now that you mention it, I'm just running a blank almost. Trying to stay away from the pears. They have some problems, and the ornamental pears. They have a lot of drops sometimes, and sometimes not a very fragrant flower. And they do drop limbs too. But I'm working with our landscape architect to come up with a list of trees, and I'd like to see, you know, maybe you know, working with the architectural committee and seeing if somebody has a suggestion. I know we have our nursery. You have your nursery in town, and I forgot who it was that has an arborist tree cutting business right there. His office is right there. But so I'm open to suggestions.
Thank you so much. You know, we love guests, and we don't love to put you on the spot, but we're so thankful that you're able to answer questions. So
well, I appreciate this. This helps me sharpen for questions. Try to, you know, this is going to be a developing situation, and put a shine on it. Come up with people's comments and questions. We're definitely going to stir some thought. Hopefully not some anger or tension. But this is an informational sharing. You know, these are my thoughts. I want to know your thoughts. What we can do to keep the aesthetics, keep the culture, prevent the risks. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, that's everything in the chat now. Tom, thank you for this. And I just want to also appreciate the fact that you're juggling an entire district when you do this. And when you're here in Weaverville, giving your attention to Main Street trees, you know, I guess I'm a little bit, I'd like more clarity on what that juggling really means to you. We're kind of out of time for right now, but you know, when you're here and you're looking at this, I'm just wondering, you know, you spend the time and attention here, and then if you're off elsewhere, you know, kind of what that process looks like of when you come back again. And I imagine there's a method in your mind as to what you need to take care of while you're here so that unfortunate situations don't occur when you're not. Can you speak to that just briefly?
Yeah. So we have our maintenance station in Weaverville, Hayfork, Trinity Center, and we have one central superintendent who has a great background, Joe McNeely, and then each one of those locations has their supervisor. So they also are being trained and to look out for hazards, not just for trees, but all our assets. We do have a tree crew that does run the district, and he's all over the county, all over the North State, working with the complicated situations that the crews can't handle themselves. So it's not just me, but there's multiple players within maintenance that can address the situation. So it's not just one person for 7 counties.
Okay, nice. All right, Tom, we're going to say thank you so much to you for committing this time to us. And I know you have many places to be, and you twisted some things around to be here for us tonight. And I really, really appreciate that. Just a couple things. We've got about 3 minutes before we're done with this evening. And so I know that some people had submitted some questions thinking, hey, we've got somebody from CalTrans on this evening. Maybe they could speak to these things, signage, restrooms, letting folks know about, an RV turnaround parking kind of down in the Leaf Long area. So I just want you to know I'm in contact with Chris Woodward, and he's the public information officer for CalTrans. So it's a completely different sector of what CalTrans provides from what Tom does. So if you were thinking that maybe he might speak to some of those things, that's why not, because that's not his area. But these are things that will come up in the future for discussion. I do want to let folks know, I mean, it takes an hour to do this, and it's awesome. We found things that are important to talk about, and I'm grateful for that. I also do want to engage with all of you, though, and have you really speak into what kinds of things you want to hear about here in the future. Again, I'm reaching out. I'm going to program this. I'm not going to let it, fall into blank space, but I want to meet what you want to talk about and hear about too. So email me through the website or just directly text. I'm not hard to find. Then just note too that when you've got things that need a little bit of extra publicity, I'm happy to help with that with the website, and hopefully we can drive more traffic there. But the PATH, Partnership in Action for Trinity Health, they've got a virtual health fair coming up, and so that's under the events page on our website. And the Arts Council is on there. They're looking for a database of artists and musicians and vendors. So that's under an updates tab because it's not an actual event. So I just put that as an update. And then the RCD is having their 12th annual plant and seed exchange. And so that's coming up, and you need to sign up for that event. And you can find details under the events page for that too. So that takes us to an hour. Does anybody else have anything they just want to, stick in the chat quickly, or you can unmute and speak to if you would like? Don't want to cut anybody off.
We wanted to know how to get Tom's email address. So I was wondering if Tom's email was public information and if there was a way to contact Tom.
You're muted. You're trying to speak, I think, Tom.
You can either send it to me or send it to Jill, and maybe she can forward it to me also. But I'll just go ahead and give it to you if you have something to write with. It's Thomas, THOMAS .march, MARCH @dot.ca.gov.
Okay, perfect.
I'd love to hear about what people have to say.
Perfect. If you didn't get that quickly, I can help with that as well. So, all right, with that, I'll just say thank you.
Can you hold up for Jill, just a second? Tom, while you were talking, I was doing a little research on some old Trinity journals, and I find a picture in January of '65, and there's a picture of one of the liquid ambers right by one of the spiral staircases. It looks like it has a trunk of about maybe 2 or 3 inches, and is about as tall as a spiral staircase, that upper level. So that's about the size of that tree. So it probably was planted a year or two before '65. So
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. That's good. Good to know. So when I write, gather my information, that's what I need to know about. Thank you.
That's fun, Darryl. Maybe we can stick a picture of that baby tree on the website somewhere and enjoy it. That's fun. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. And everybody take care. We'll see you next month. Good night.